In the 2 years since the Palestinian people started the current war, um, Israel's response has been kind of cyclical. Sometimes it looks like they kind of are fighting seriously. Sometimes it looks like they're not. Right now is one of those moments when it looks like they might be. Last night Gaza City was under heavy bombardment. Over 850 targets struck by Israel. With all sorts of bombs from all sorts of aircraft and so on. And the ground troops have started haven't gone into Gaza City yet, but started encircling it. It looks like they're about to start the ground operation. Um, many of the civilians in Gaza have been moved out of the city in Gaza City, and this always there's always something mixed here. I mean, for me, I obviously have said, if Israel right now adopted what I think should be done, they would take the soldiers out, they would start bombarding from the air, and then they would send the soldiers back. And the only instances in which Israel would risk the lives of its soldiers was whenever there is an opportunity to rescue a hostage. No soldier should be put in harm's way to protect Palestinians. And that is what all but, I believe, one of Israel's casualties, the IDF's casualties in this war, that was why they died. Protecting Palestinian civilians from what would happen to them if Israel prioritized Israeli lives over their lives. So this of course goes within that context, but without that kind of operation, this is better than nothing. It's tragic. Israeli soldiers will die if this operation goes ahead. That is a certainty with the way Israel chooses to fight, but it will bring Hamas closer to being defeated and will mitigate the immediate risk to Israelis. It won't. It's not total victory because you can't have victory if you don't identify the enemy. Um, so yeah, this is where we are at the moment with Israel's operation. It is said that 130,000 troops will take place over the period, which is expected to last until sometime in the first quarter of next year. And one thing to always remember is Israel's top priority isn't defeating the Palestinians or even defeating Hamas. It is rescuing the hostages. Therefore, any military action by Israel is a negotiating tactic in a way, and we need to keep that in mind with this as well. Yeah, Hamas is being battered a little bit, but if they say jump, Netanyahu says how high when it comes to the negotiation. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginsburg. I'm joined by James Valiant. James, your thoughts on what we've seen last night, what we're seeing today, and what we can expect to see in the coming days, weeks, and months.
Well, the just moral justification for this existed way back on October 7th. Why this something like this even? I mean, you're absolutely right. It is immoral to risk a single Israeli soldier to protect Palestinians. It is immoral. Let me just repeat. The Israeli government does not work for its enemy, the Palestinians. It works to protect its own people, including its own soldiers. And the most efficient and effective way of defeating the enemy is all they need be concerned about. I mean, however, we are getting something good here, something comparatively good. But as you pointed out at the very beginning, what is it? In 3 weeks, it's going to be the second anniversary, 2 year anniversary since the atrocities of October 7th. Why wasn't this going on back in October of 2023 when they would have had much more political capital? I mean, all I can say here is that does look like I'd see it. The longer you wait, it becomes too little, too late. There's a process of diminishing returns the longer you wait. Now, I'm not dissing the fact that they're doing something kinetic, as they say, but you're absolutely right. I also have in the back of my head, well, this can always be called off by what? Negotiations? And what is this just as you point out, it really is only targeting Hamas when the real problem is the ideology. They're going to, they were getting help from Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis. I mean, there's a wider ideology of Islamism that is the enemy. Palestinianism, we might call it, since they have adopted that term as a self-identifier. But the point is, this they're going to be that kind of a kinetic action where you actually drop hundreds of missiles and bombs. Why wasn't this happening in October of 2023? Why are we discussing it now? Why are they doing even this now in September of 2025? All of the misery for Israelis in the meantime, right? And it would have been able, Israel would have been able to focus on the other enemies that it was surely going to face. It shouldn't have had to wait for Hezbollah to kill people in the north and start attacking for the north. They shouldn't have had to wait for their other enemies to gather and do what they've done. If they'd taken care of Gaza early on, then they could have focused on the other enemies. They could have reduced human suffering all around if they'd done this, and only an aggressive action back then would have been provided the correct, let's put it this way, deterrence, as the strategic minds out there like to call it. But now, almost 2 years on, we're in a world of diminishing returns. Now, as I say, don't take this as my saying they shouldn't be doing this. They should be dropping bombs to hell. What? But as I said, I think on October 10th, I don't see why Gaza City wasn't rubble within hours or days of October 7th, 2023. Why is it now September 2025 when we're hearing about hundreds of bombs dropping on Gaza City? I mean, I don't get it. In any event, hooray, go get them, Netanyahu, destroy Hamas, and that has to be the priority over anything else, even over the hostages. Yes, it is. That is a case where it's worth risking Israeli soldiers' lives. If you have specific intelligence and think you can recover a hostage, that's where it might make sense to risk Israeli soldiers. Absolutely. But making sure that nearly the entire population leaves is actually a self-defeating strategy. But even given all that, thank goodness we have hundreds of bombs dropping on Gaza City. But it's about 2 years too late.
Well, so thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Bronx Guy Gun Hill Road, for the super chat. It's the thing is, bombs have been dropping on Gaza for 2 years, but Israel's problem, I asked Daniel before the show if there's anything. I was kind of not paying attention to the news in the last couple of hours. If I missed anything important for the show, and he mentioned there's a Houthi missile that was fired at Israel. Earlier today, Israel attacked in Yemen, and before that, the IDF's Arabic spokesperson, the IDF, first of all, has a spokesperson in Arabic, issued a warning. All those buildings in Gaza looks like a picture of justice, but all those buildings where terrorists were hiding, their weapons, were destroyed after giving advance notice. And this, I go back to my line of buildings don't kill people, Palestinians kill people. So if Israel wanted to win the war, it doesn't really, I understand and I appreciate the bombing of buildings, but it's never going to be enough, especially when you know that these savages live in tunnels, and yeah, many of the tunnels have been destroyed, but not all of them. And the people in, if there are people in those buildings, they often are civilians who have zero sympathy for unless they're children. But that's who's going to be there, and they're going to be forced by Hamas to stay there. So yeah, when Israel actually goes and fights terrorists directly, when not announcing it in advance, it does so in a way that sort of it gives the enemy an equalizer by going in with ground troops. And yeah, you mentioned the fact that so many people are evacuating. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have evacuated Gaza City. Does Israel really believe its own bullshit that there's two separate groups of people in Gaza, the civilians and Hamas? Because again, those civilians flooded Israel by the thousands on October 7th when they heard what Hamas has done and went to take part. The others flooded the streets of Gaza by the thousands to celebrate. There were cries of joy. Now we see them crying supposedly out of misery. There were cries of joy that they themselves, posted online. We're again, you're lying to yourself about who the enemy is, and then you're surprised that you can't win a war in 2 years.
Precisely, precisely. Look, if and I'm not going to get into parsing the specific terrorist groups and factions among the Palestinians. That is utterly irrelevant. But if the general strategy of Hamas were objectionable to the Palestinians, there'd be no Hamas right now. The Palestinian people would be doing the hunting down in Gaza of those monster leaders they had. They have no objection to those monster leaders in a moral sense. They can't. I mean, they get the H.L. Mencken is an American literary critic and political analyst from the uh, almost a century ago now, said something very clever about democracy. And whether or not there's democracy in Gaza is really not the issue. Democracy is the theory that people deserve to get what they want, good and hard. And the fact is that the Palestinians deserve Hamas because they are the ones keeping it or some other group like that in power. They are, in principle, opposed to the existence of Israel. They're happy to live and die for the destruction of Israel and killing as many Jews as they can. And so there is no division here between the people and the variety of terrorist factions who would vie to be their leader, their leadership. The Palestinians are getting what they deserve, good and hard, when Israel fights. But they're not getting it when Mr. Netanyahu ties one hand behind his back, pulls his punches, tells people they should leave buildings. We should give the Palestinians exactly what they demand. They demand death. They're willing to use their own children as shields. They're willing to use hospitals as weapon caches. Absolutely. These people do not want to live a civilized life. What they want to do is kill their own children if necessary, so they could, in the glorious cause of killing Israel. This is a fanatically, religiously motivated group of collectivist, tribalist thugs. And that is Palestinian culture. That is the enemy. And so, insofar as the West continues to make distinctions between the Palestinian people and Hamas, they will get rid of Hamas. It will reemerge in another form, in another way, until we address the basic sickness, the cancer of Islamism, which is particularly violent and egregious among Palestinians. They think it a glorious cause. Religiosity is the enemy here. They don't mind dying. They don't mind killing their own children and using them as human shields. That is the strategy here. That is the strategy here. And we get sucked in when we worry about Palestinian so-called civilians. We get sucked in straight to their strategy. I mean, in any war, it is the aggressor who's killing their own population when the defender fights back. But in this case, it's like some eloquent demonstration. It's like they're begging you to kill their civilians because that they know that those headlines and that international uproar that would happen, even though Israel is acting in perfect self-defense, is their best strategy. And that is another reason why the bombing of Gaza City, the annihilation of Gaza City, should have happened back in October of 2023, not here in September of 2025, even if that's what Netanyahu is planning on doing. So it's too little in the sense that you give them the warning to get out of the buildings, and it's too late to really be effective. So no, and we have to get out of our heads the idea that there's a distinction between the Palestinian people and their leadership groups whom they elect.
Yeah, and I believe this is Operation uh, Gideon's Chariots 2 or B or something like that. And yeah, the right name for it or for anything Israel is doing is Operation Better Than Nothing, because it's better than nothing just about, but it's not what Israel should be doing. Somebody in the chat asks about the Sparta thing. I think that might deserve its own episode, but as a general comment, Netanyahu is fantastic with words. Like he's given speeches that I still go back and watch, from the 80s. He's great. If he applied half of what he's doing. I think the last 2 years he's surprised me, favorably. Like he's done more than I would expect him to do. It's still nowhere near enough. It still doesn't match his rhetoric. But yeah, the Sparta thing is good. So for those of you who missed it, Netanyahu said we're going to have to be Athens and Sparta. We're going to have to face economic sanctions in the next few years and so on. And that is absolutely the right approach. You don't say, look, we're not going to defend ourselves from people who slaughtered our citizens and said they will continue to do it again and again until there are no more Jews left to kill because somebody might not trade with us. That is not within the legitimate role of government. You don't have the right to not defend your citizens as the government. So yeah, absolutely. Israel, first of all, Vered says, no, sorry, it's somebody else with a V. Volt says Israel lost the PR. Um, yeah, that's true, and that's because it's so apologetic in about the very idea of fighting this war. We talked about the pathetic performance by Israel's president, Israel's left-wing president in the UK, groveling to Israel's enemies, apologizing for Israel's existence. That is not the way, and that's not the way you win the PR. You win the PR, first of all, you try to win first and foremost the war,
The
not the PR.
war.
Try to win the war, and then explain yourself to the extent that you think needed. But I don't think it's needed. So that's that's a shame. But there's something else that's been going on, which is within the context of what's going on in Gaza City, which is Hamas has said that. The hostages are now above ground. They're going to be used as human shields. Now, we don't need Hamas to say that the hostages are going to be used as human shields. We know that Hamas is using hostages as human shields. We know that Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields. But them saying it and putting it out there in this way got the response of U.S. President Donald Trump, who has said that Hamas will be in quote big trouble if they use the hostages. Uh, Actually, you want me to read the whole Truth Social post? Well, why not? This is the President of the United States, and he has a big impact on what Israel does, if and when and what. So this is the post by Donald Trump. I've just read a news report that Hamas has moved the hostages above ground to use them as human shields against Israel's ground offensive. I hope the leaders of Hamas know what they're getting into if they do such a thing. This is a human atrocity, the likes of which few people have ever seen before. Don't let don't let this happen, or all caps, all bets are off. Release all hostages now. Now, but leaving aside the fact that I don't understand Trump, what he decides to capitalize and when and why and what he puts in quotation marks. This is again one of those moments, like we said back in January when he put the Saturday noon deadline, or all hell will break loose or whatever it was he said. Uh, Hopefully Netanyahu has learned his, yeah, hell to pay. Hopefully Netanyahu has learned his lesson here and will use this green light and go.
Go. Go. No, no. They were already threatened with murder when they were taken hostage. All of this negotiation about getting them back, trying to negotiate with Hamas. Don't you see how evil it was to do the negotiation? No, the fate of these hostages was always going to be that. Yes, some have come out alive, starved, beaten, enslaved, raped, kept in dark holes in the ground for months on end. Yeah, no, this is the nature of the atrocity of hostage taking. Of course, they're going to threaten to do that. But how much clearer? And guess what? The international community will say, see how Israel killed those hostages? Hostages they didn't take. Hostages, it was, wait a minute, we're the victims. You take our innocent civilians hostage, and then we act in self-defense. Then they use them. Get this, they go again. With Hamas, it's almost like an exaggerated statement. In any context of war, hostage taking would be an atrocity. And you could not, you would have to say, I'm sorry, but I can't place the lives of those specific hostages first. It's the destruction of hostage takers and the disempowering of hostage taking that we have to deal with. But when you go down that compromised path, then of course what you look at what you've done. You've actually opened up them to use as a strategy, which is in this case, as I say, an extreme case. You wouldn't need them to use human shields. You wouldn't need them to use their own babies as human shields or hostages as human shields to be able to denounce hostage taking and identify who the aggressors were in that case, would you? It's not a function of them using them as human shields, having them at all that puts them in jeopardy, that puts their lives at risk. But yeah, thank you, Mr. Trump, for that at least. And let's hope that these words aren't completely empty air, uh, uh, which they very frequently are, coming from Mr. Trump. He was going to solve the Ukraine thing by the inauguration day. How many times would there be hell to pay in Iran or Hamas? And it hasn't happened. So, but my God, of course, they're going to use the hostages as human shields. Then that will only underline how Hamas is how Palestinianism and Palestinians are responsible for the deaths of these hostages should they get killed in the process. I mean, but no, you're going to have international voices that'll say, see how Israel killed the hostages. That is if your mind is even tempted to go that way, it shows you how divorced from reality, how divorced from the facts international opinion is on the subject of Israel. I can only think that profound anti-Semitism across, and you don't pay attention. You don't pay attention to international opinion at all. And in fact, Israel, you are such a productive, civilized country. Believe me, that your trading partners need you a lot more than you need them. So don't give the slightest damn what anyone says. You go do what you do, and if you have to take an economic hit, you take it because you're defending your population, for God's sakes.
Yeah, and again, the idea, and Netanyahu said this also in his Sparta speech, Israel might have to become a self-reliant economy. That's uh, depressing to think, but Israel can do that if needed. So, yeah, tough tough times financially are a absolutely legitimate price to pay for not being killed while having trading partners. Somebody in the chat,
Just a footnote, Mr. Trump, keep your goddamn tariffs off Israel, for God's sakes. They're fighting for their lives.
keep your
That's
goddamn
my only
tariffs.
personal comment on
Keep your
tariffs.
goddamn tariffs off everybody, Mr.
Well,
Trump.
yes, of
So
course.
they're so anti-American. And by the way, one thing that as viewers of this channel know, I don't hold back criticism of Trump. But when it comes to this statement and whether or not he'll back it up, he doesn't need to back it up, as far as I'm concerned. The statement is all that's needed. Um, he made that statement and it's on Israel. I do not expect, B-2 bombers to fly in. It's on Israel to actually Daniel, please remove the spammer from the chat. It's on Israel to do what needs to be done against its enemy and to defend itself. It's not on America. Um, Oh, so another thing I wanted to quickly bring up is I heard somewhere in a news report that the goal is operational control in Gaza City, which again, this is one of those, you know, wording that people use that I really, really dislike. What the hell is operational control? If you're fighting a war, the goal is always victory. And an operation in one place or another as part of the war, the goal is victory. That's the goal. And as long as Israel doesn't use that word, and again, it would make no sense for it to use that word while telling the enemy where it's going to bomb, while asking civilians to leave. There was a funny, not very funny, but somewhat funny report today in the news how Ashkelon, a city in Israel where I was born, by the way, had some flyers fell there of that were meant for Palestinians, telling them to leave where they are. So come on, stop it. If you're moving the population from one place to another, and there is still fighting. maybe among those hundreds of thousands of people, maybe there are fighters. And again, we always see them unarmed. We know, and this is a big part, I think, of why Israel destroys the building. It's because every single building in Gaza has weapons. It doesn't always have people, but it always has weapons. That's why you never see armed Palestinians, but you do see Palestinians killing. How do they kill if they're not armed? Because the buildings have weapons. They go in, they get the weapons when there's an opportunity to use them to kill Israelis.
You know, changing a culture and an ideology is a long-term process. It's a matter of education, obviously, and ideas. But you're never going to drive, in a practical sense, in at least the near-term sense, a wedge between the population and these terror leaders until the population suffers. So long as you continue to warn the civilian population and protect them, you are protecting them from the consequences of their own leadership, of their own choices, of their own attitudes. And there's no way that even in the near term, you're going to drive any kind of wedge between the population where it says, Uncle, Uncle, we give up. At the very least, they won't give up their evil ideas. They won't change their, religion-based hatred. No, 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 that won't happen. That is an ideological thing that can only happen with education over time. But at least you could drive a practical wedge between these terrorist leaders and the Palestinians, but only if you make the Palestinian population suffer, and only to that extent. Now, if it means to occupy Gaza properly, okay, occupy Gaza properly. It's what calls for. These people are unfit to govern themselves. All they exist for is to attack Israel. So you had every right, Israel, to occupy. Well, you should never have left 20 years ago. You should never have left Gaza and forced a relocation of your own people out of there in the first place. We have seen the two-state solution in action for the last 20 years. This is what it looks like. But in any case, the point is you had certainly after all those rockets that have been lobbed over at you by Hamas over the last 20 years gave you the right. And if that didn't give you the right, surely October 7th did. October 7th gives you the right to have a complete and total occupation lockdown of that place. It is astonishing to me how people morally are confused across the board here. Uh,
Yeah.
but there you are.
Somebody in the chat said Gaza would make a lovely Las Vegas. Yeah, we've talked in the past about how by the way, it's already called the Strip. I think it would make a great Las Vegas without the current population. Big fan of Vegas, and we've talked about how we're hoping to have a conference someday in a massive hotel casino in Gaza. For now, we're sticking to the places which are not where Gaza currently is, like Orange County. Our conference next month in Orange County, right next to the airport, so you can fly in, fly out, not miss a minute of work. James, you're going to be there. You're going to be coaching. Michael Kaufman, who's going to be joining us on the reality show, will be there. He will be coaching as well. He will be speaking. I will be there as eye candy. Jonathan Honig from this channel will be there. Jonathan Honig is on national television every single week in the U.S. as an objectivist, as somebody who is open about his ideas and is not afraid of being canceled. Mark Pellegrino is in Hollywood, where it's much more difficult to not be canceled when you're open about your views and they're not, go birds, free Palestine. And yet, he is speaking out. He is going to be at the conference. Alex Epstein will be at the conference, and of course, Ayn Rand's heir Leonard Peikoff will be speaking at the conference. So make sure you sign up. There's a lot more. I just can't fit it into this quick pitch because we have another show. But yeah, there's a lot more. The schedule will be posted today. It's a skeleton schedule. It doesn't include the details of every talk, but it does include who is speaking when, what events are happening when. We're going to post that on our Facebook and on our website later today. Um, Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. James, Michael, and I are on the reality show, which starts in a couple minutes.
Be safe.
Oh,